Welcome to the Church History Mapping application. It's a web-based application for mapping historical events related to the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. I'm David Merrill with Scott Christensen, and we have attempted to establish a user-friendly application that would help users understand historical church events in terms of both place and time. Thank you. Okay, we'll go over our code first. First, our HTML file, the index file. It's the first references some style sheets we've established, and then it also references to open layers here, and then we've established some JS queries, jQueries, and also we've done that also for the timeline. And then it references our JavaScript for the mapping scripts. And then also we have a header here, several div tags that reference our header, a timeline. This toggle does, you'll see it later, but it opens up and closes our title block. And then this div tag references our map.
This file is our mapping.js file where we included all of the JavaScript for our website. As you can see, we've licensed this under the MIT license. We first set up a couple of global variables here that we use throughout in many of the functions that we have. We then have our initialize function where we set up the web page. We first set a toggle on our header so that we can toggle that on and off. You'll see that functionality later. It just opens up the web page to focus on just the mapping and timeline. This is our API key for using Bing Maps. We set up a variable to include the geometry in our KML file. Then here we set up several base map layers to allow the user to choose the base map they would like to view. Here we actually create the map. We set up the KML as a layer in open layers, and then we add all of those layers to our map. Here we add some controls, and we turn on event listening on our features, and then we center the map to the extents of our geometry here. Finally, we initialize the timeline and size that, and you'll see that later on. We have a few functions here that take care of pop-ups. Pop-ups can be selected through the timeline through this function, or by selecting them directly on the map. Both of these functions refer to the select feature function, which actually takes care of formatting and displaying the pop-up. When in our select feature map here, you'll see this if-else statement. This is so we can handle line selection. Our function down here centers the map on the centroid of the feature. So for our line functions, that was out in the middle of nowhere, since the line was the centroid of the line wasn't actually on the line. So here we actually change the selection when they select the line to a point on the line, so that the pop-up is referenced on the line. This format references is a helper function to the pop-up bubbles. It just formats the references that we have in our KML so that they can be linked to. Here we have a couple functions that take care of clearing pop-ups, whether the feature is unselected or the pop-up is closed directly. Here again is the function that toggles the header so it's visible or not. And then we have the initialization of our timeline. This first section you'll see is a long section that handles all of the events. It adds all the events in a JSON format into the timeline. And then here we tie the timeline to the div that we showed in our HTML. We set the width to fit to the screen, and then set the extents of the timeline and add that JSON list of events that we just showed to the timeline.
Here's our features.kml file. All shapes were exported as a single layer to KML from ArcGIS 10.0, but each type of shape has its own different folder. So points, lines, and polygons are contained in separate folders, and their IDs begin with respectively 10,000, 20,000, and 3,000. So here our first point is the hill Camorra, and it begins with 10,000, 0, and included in the descriptions of the place mark we have a picture reference, a hyperlink picture reference, a description of the event, the dates, a reference, which at least for the points usually includes a scriptural reference to LDS.org, and then you have the styles. And under the point is the coordinates. We go down here. Oh, I lost my place already. Continue down. Here. Now we have we're in the 20,000s, and we have the lines. And lines are formatted similarly. They each have a name, picture, event, but they have separate IDs of 20,000. And you can see that they're in a separate folder up here. And it's similarly for the polygons. Here we have 30,000. That is the church office building. The polygons are shapes outlined of different buildings around Temple Square, which also include, this is the place marking there all around Salt Lake City, and here's the beginning folder for the polygons, and the line strings were traces of maps found for Zion's Camp and the Mormon Trail. At the end of the KML file, I have a new folder that contains the styles, reference a Moroni picture for the points, and then the lines were styled using, they actually reference two different lines, one on top of the other. In ArcGIS you can give a line multiple colors, but we found that wasn't the case in a KML file, so you have to give a line, you have to layer one fatter line below a thinner line. And then the polygons are hollow golden outlines. Okay, here's our website, christensenengineering.org. As we noted earlier, the title block can hide itself. Just click here to hide. Click on the arrow to open. There's a timeline on the top, and the points reference to specific timed events. The lines are were programmed to look similar to wagon tracks. The points are the angel Moroni. And if we scroll in closer, you can see that Temple Square and the conference center and a couple of surrounding buildings were outlined to give to qualify for the point, line, and polygon requirement. Then each pop-up comes with a title, a picture, references the event description, the date, and then all the references are hyperlinks. So we can go to this hyperlink, and it goes, a lot of the references were referenced to Wikipedia. Hopefully that avoids any potential problems with complaints. And then the pictures are a reference to most of the pictures were taken from WikiLinks also. So there's only a couple private ones. A lot of the private ones were specifically referenced within the file program. So we tried to give the trail a little bit of detail. It's not exact, but it was pretty close on. When we added some of the points, they were pretty close to where the trail ended up when it was geo-referenced. It was surprising to see actually where Zion's camp was. I don't think either of us ever realized the extent or direction of that trail took. And of course the points actually start with Joseph Smith's birthplace over in the east, and then they move west, ending in Martin's Cove.
So I just want to show some of the controls that we've added to our map. We've got the zoom here that allows us to zoom in and out, which can also be done with the scroll wheel. We also have this layers where the users can the user can select the base map that they'd like to choose. And we can also select points from the timeline. When multiple points are close together, they show up in a list here. So we can select those points and see the pop-ups and zooms in on the area. Also, in these references, we have them highlighted when you select the reference so that you can see those features on LDS.org. And I'm going to show the help file. We link to the help file in our header here. We have some screenshots that explain the different parts of our website and how to use that, how to view the pop-up bubbles and the extent there. At the top of our help file, we link to our technical documentation where we list the licensing, technical specifications, and we explain the design of our code at the bottom. So this is our website. We were excited to create it, and